Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Lizette Tejada, MLA for Calgary-Klein, and I want to start by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 7 territory and also recognize the Métis people who share a deep connection to this land. Today we're here to talk about an issue that is important to workers across Alberta and will benefit our economy as well as a whole. Despite high inflation and a cost of living crisis, Alberta's minimum wage hasn't gone up even a dime in the last 7 years. The last time our province's minimum wage was increased was under Alberta's New Democrats. Alberta's New Democrats have always been champions for working people and fair wages. Today, we stand here to speak up for Albertans and for fair pay, which should benefit families and our economy. I'd like to thank our guest for joining us. Janine Rogan, founder and CEO of Wealth Building Academy Incorporated. I'd also like to recognize my fellow MLAs who are here with us today. Julia Hayter, MLA for Calgary-Edgemont. Irfan Sabir, MLA for Calgary Northeast, for Calgary Buller-McCall, and Gurinder Brar, MLA for Calgary Northeast. And to discuss this further, and on behalf of Alberta's New Democrats, I'd like to introduce someone who has always stood up for Albertans and a better province, the leader of Alberta's New Democrats, Naheed Nenshi.
Well, thanks very much, Lizette, and thank you all for being here with us today. This has been an expensive summer and is going to be an expensive and difficult autumn for many of us, but no more so than people who are lower income. So this fall, you're going to hear a lot from Alberta's New Democrats about the importance of attacking the affordability crisis, of protecting people's paychecks and making it easier for people to live here in Alberta. Albertans are facing enormous pressure from the rising cost of living, and life in this beautiful province that we all call home is becoming more unaffordable for too many people, and everyday people need help to protect their paychecks. We know you want to protect the money you earn, especially in an affordability crisis. People are more and more conscious, and you'll hear a little bit from Janine about this, about what people are spending their hard-earned salaries on as they fight to find jobs that allow them to earn enough to live. And we believe something very strongly, which is if you work hard, if you go to work every single day, you deserve to live a life without financial fear. Affordability has many, many moving parts, about a lot of those this fall. But today I want to focus on the minimum wage. In just over a week, on October 1st, Albertans will receive an autumn present. It's not a present any of us want. On October 1st, Alberta will officially have the lowest minimum wage in the entire country. The province will have gone past us. This is unacceptable. Albertans are also the highest inflation costs in Canada. They feel it every time they go to the grocery store. We have some of the highest auto insurance rates in the country. Our costs are rising fast. Our utilities under the UCP have as much as quadrupled. And everyone is feeling the pinch from the housing crisis. But to make matters worse, Alberta's unemployment rates are the highest west of Newfoundland. Our youth unemployment rate is the highest it has ever been. And how is it that the UCP government is helping Albertans cope with some of the highest costs of living in the country? By paying Albertans the lowest minimum wage in the country. Albertans deserve so much better. We're still the richest province, despite what the Premier tells us all the time. We're still the richest province, and that means that we can do better than we're doing now. And that's why Alberta's New Democrats are calling on the UCP government to raise the minimum wage today and to index it to inflation going forward. Every other province indexes their minimum wage to inflation. It's shocking this hasn't been done, but the UCP continues their attack on lower income people. We've gone from having the highest minimum wage in the country in 2018 to the lowest today, and Alberta remains the only province that doesn't tie it to inflation. Why does this matter? It matters because it's unfair to minimum wage workers and it's unfair to small businesses. We've known for months and months exactly what was going to happen in Saskatchewan and how much the minimum wage would increase in October, for example. But the UCP, through their inaction, have led us to a situation where they're going to have to do a step increase in the minimum wage, which businesses have not budgeted for and have not prepared for. And if we simply tied it to inflation in the long term, we would avoid these sort of shocks. Small businesses also are the backbone of our economy, and we need to ensure that they are also thriving, but doing so while paying workers fairly. And certainly, we spent a lot of time talking to small businesses across the province. They're not saying don't increase the minimum wage. They're saying make it fair, make it predictable. We want to treat our employees well. And that's precisely what we're calling for today. And to tell you a little bit more about how people are really feeling right now, I'm thrilled to have Janine Rogan with us. Thank you for joining us today. Janine is the CEO and founder of the Wealth Building Academy, and I'll turn it over to you, Janine.
Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Janine Rogan, and I'm a financial expert, a CPA, and a best-selling author. I work with Canadians, particularly women, to advance financial empowerment, financial literacy, and to ultimately close the wealth gap. Alberta is not an easy place to make ends meet, to put food on your table, and to support your family. Right now, the average rent for a 2-bedroom condo in Edmonton is around $1,700 a month, and it jumps to $1,900 in Calgary. So we've all heard these stories of people struggling, and we see it every single day. These stories are really painful to hear and see, and I work with a lot of my clients that are also facing these financial struggles. Personal debt, increasing expenses, and rising inflation have made it incredibly hard and very challenging for Albertans to make ends meet. $15 an hour is not enough to keep people afloat. And we know that 60% of minimum wage workers in this province are women. The last time minimum wage was raised was in 2018. And if minimum wage had been indexed to inflation then, during the last 7 years, we would have seen a 23% increase to $18.42 per hour. Alberta is the richest province in Canada, and we have the lowest minimum wage in Canada as of October 1st. Increasing minimum wage is really a positive for Albertans. It could mean paying an extra bill on time, making sure that families can have nutritious meals, being able to afford a place to live that's near their work, and being able to drive to work. Most people would agree that the cost of almost everything has gone up in the last decade, and yet minimum wage has been stagnant. So at the very least, our wages should be indexed to inflation, and this has not been the case. People deserve living wages, and I agree with Mr. Nenshi that everyone's pay needs to reflect this change. People are hard-pressed to make ends meet when they're making minimum wage. So experts suggest that no more than 30% of a family's income should be going to housing. Yet at $1,900 a month in Calgary, for this to be true, you would need a post-tax household income of about $76,000, requiring a pre-tax salary of $97,000 per year. This would require 3 adults to work 54 hours every week of the year at the current minimum wage. When I talk to people that are struggling, it is really challenging for them to be able to budget when they don't have enough income to cover their fixed expenses on a monthly basis. And honestly, it's heartbreaking when you're with someone and they realize that the math simply just doesn't add up and they don't have enough income to cover those expenses. So we are already quite far behind and too late in calling for an increase to minimum wage. By October 1, it will be embarrassing for us as a province and devastating for people who are in the most financially precarious positions to be able to provide for themselves and their families. So we absolutely need to do the right thing. I think we've waited too long for this, and we need to raise our minimum wage now. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will ask Nenshi to come back to the mic.
Well, thanks very much, Janine. And we really heard just now the reality that people are facing every day. This is not a theoretical or an abstract conversation. It's about making a real change to people's lives right now. And this government has the chance to do it. They've had the chance to do it for the last 6 years. And we know that unemployment in Alberta is the second highest in the country. We know that people, particularly lower income people, are not able to make ends meet, and it's time to make some real action. And so that's, once again, we're calling on the government to raise the minimum wage today and to index it to inflation so that small business and minimum wage workers can have some fairness, some stability, and some predictability. Happy to take questions.
All right, thanks, folks. So we'll actually start with questions on the line, and then we'll come in person. So just a reminder to use the raise hand function. If you're joining us on the phone, you can use *9 to get into the question queue. Our first question comes from Sean Amato, City News. And Sean, your line should be open.
Hey, what would you set the minimum wage at exactly, and how would you go about would you phase it up? Would you just set it at a higher rate? What would you do?
Thanks, Sean. You know, the problem here is that the UCP's done nothing for 7 years. Had they continued with Rachel Notley's plan and indexed it to inflation, we wouldn't be in this situation now. So the challenge here is, if you do it all at once, that's very disconcerting for small businesses. It's very dislocating. And so what we'd have to do is figure out a schedule in consultation with low-wage earners and in consultation with employers to figure out how to get there. But ultimately, this is the job of the UCP government, and we'd love to see what proposals they come up with. Right now, their proposal is nothing. And if they simply adjust it to inflation for this year, then that won't nearly be enough to make a difference for people. So we've got to figure out that right phase-in schedule.
And Sean, do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, I didn't hear a number. Can you please give us some numbers?
No, because ultimately this has to be done in consultation, and this is government's job.
All right, our next question comes from Lisa Johnson. Lisa, your line should be open.
Hey, can you folks hear me all right?
Yep.
Great, thanks. I would anticipate that the government would respond to your call by saying that the most pressing problem right now is youth unemployment.
Sure.
So handcuffing employers to pay young people more would exacerbate the youth unemployment problem. How would you respond to that?
Look, that has been their argument. But here's the thing. We've got the lowest minimum wage in the country and the highest youth unemployment. So clearly their idea of paying people poorly to create jobs isn't working. And so in Econ 101, this is what you learn. You increase wages, you decrease employment, but you also learn that there are floor and ceiling effects. And so what we know now is the minimum wage is so low that a lot of people just don't have an incentive to work for that level because they're not going to make enough to get by. And so ultimately, we do not believe, and a lot of economists would agree with me, that keeping the minimum wage this artificially low is actually having any impact whatsoever on increasing jobs. We simply don't believe it's the case, and we've seen example after example after example in different jurisdictions over the last decade that increasing the minimum wage does not result in the unemployment effects you would have learned in Econ 101.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
Well, yeah, thanks for that. I just wanted to get your reaction, Mr. Nenshi, to the Premier's latest comments on Saturday regarding potentially using the notwithstanding clause on 3 bills affecting transgender people. She basically said they're aiming to prevent children from being sterilized, which in broad terms is a false claim since several of the medical interventions banned in Bill 26 don't sterilize anybody.
That is correct.
I'm wondering what your reaction is to her justification for this.
You know, the Premier has often called herself the most freedom-loving politician in Canada. She has a tattoo that says liberty, and it's such a shame that she has abandoned all of her values for political gain. Because here's the thing, the ultimate arbiter of freedom and of liberty is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And the Premier has many, many times said she's going to let the courts decide. The courts are supreme. She is not going to try and presume what the Charter says. And now she's completely changed her tune. So number one, she's fear-mongering, gaslighting, and lying. We know that this is not about sterilization. Pronoun policies don't lead to sterilization. Making girls over 12 years old prove their sex to try out for a school team is not about sterilization. She's making things up. But in addition to that, and more troubling, she's saying that she knows that her bills are unconstitutional. And as recently as 2 months ago, she said they were beautifully drafted and they were entirely constitutional. It's clear that she knows that they're unconstitutional and that she is willing to subvert the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to try and appeal to her base, to pander. The other challenge here is that in so doing, the government of Alberta has also intervened with the Supreme Court of Canada, arguing for the right of provinces to use the notwithstanding clause whenever they want, on anything they want. And the case in front of the Supreme Court makes Canada the only country in the world, as far as I know, that bans people of certain religions from having jobs simply because of their faith. So the Premier has said she doesn't care about Muslims' rights or Jewish rights or Sikh people's rights, but she wants the right to take away anybody's rights. I guess she's not all that freedom-loving after all.
All right, we'll do one more pass for questions in person, one more pass online. All right, with that, that concludes our press conference. Thanks, folks.